So before I go into it, this is the Tado that we currently have at the moment, and in replacing it with the Repenic, we actually don't have to worry about the thermostat because both of them, in both instances, are wireless. So they're not wired, so you don't have to be worried about wiring them into the wall. So here's the system that I've got currently in place with the Tado. So I've got my boiler and all of the connections are coming into this Honeywell junction box. You may not have this, but you will definitely have one of these. This is the the receiver for the thermostat and also the receiver for the app as well. So this is connected, these three lights indicate that it's connected to my Wi-Fi and internet. Now in here, in this clever box, a bit like the Repenic that comes with it, this controls the central heating and the hot water. And in my case, and it may well be in your case as well, this little box here you may have, which is my Flowmaster, which at the moment is not controlling anything, but you may have one that controls separately the hot water. However, if you're going from a Tado system, it's likely that you just have this one box which does your central heating and your hot water. I went from a system which had the Nest, which didn't control my hot water, therefore this was the controller at the time. So to be honest, this is a bit redundant for me because it's always left on, and this wire that comes in here and then goes back out to here is literally just a live switch that just keeps it turned on. Okay, and you can see that in my last video if you wanted about what that looks like. However, I will talk you through it bit by bit in terms of replacing this with the new Repenic thermostat receiver. Now, if you are unhappy with any of this, please do seek professional advice. Obviously, you need to make sure that it is properly isolated, but if in any way you are unhappy working in electricity or working with this kind of setup, then please do seek a professional. Okay, that said, let me walk you through bit by bit. I'll start with the central heating first. Okay, so I have isolated the power, which has turned everything off. However, as I said before, please do ensure that if you are not comfortable with working with electrical systems like this, or you're not sure if it's fully isolated, then please do seek professional advice. Although you may have turned off the power, which is the 230 volt, just check if there isn't any other live coming into this system. I know that this is the only power that's powering this. I'm on a wireless thermostat, but do check if you're not happy. Now for me, I'm going to be replacing this here, which, as you can see, the Tado, it controls the central heating and the hot water with the live and the neutral. And what happens is, this is the back plate for the new Repenic controller or receiver. And therefore these numbers here completely align with exactly what you need to take out of here. Now I've got, and this is probably a bit more complicated, I've got a separate hot water and central heating system because I have a hot water tank upstairs. However, if you've just got a combi boiler, then it makes it tremendously easy because you'll only have something going into one of these lines, which is your central heating. However, let me do the central heating first, wire that in and show you which ones go to which, and then we can go from there. So if I just take this off just very quickly, so you can see these are all the wires here. Now, one thing I would definitely recommend is to start taking photos of the wires, but do be mindful that in some cases you will have wires that you see here where they may match in colour, okay, on the other side. So do be mindful of that, because if you start pulling all these wires out and you're not quite sure which ones come from what, this one here, which is a 240 volt, you may get confused with a 12 volt or another voltage. Now, just to be clear, that blue and brown on the right hand side are actually parked for me. So that was from an old wired system. So they're actually dead wires. So you shouldn't probably have this issue, but I'm just making the point that if there are any coloured wires that do match, you want to be mindful of that. So do make sure that you go systematically. I would recommend, and this is what I'm going to do, I will connect the 240 volts first and then connect the central heating. So just to show you, the blue in here is my neutral, the brown is my live for the 230 volt, and then for the central heating, you'll see it says central heating common and closed and open. I have got a black, grey, and I've got this green and yellow. Now that's a bit naughty because that usually indicates earth. So in this case, this green and yellow actually, and I've checked with a multimeter, this is live and this is the open for the central heating. Okay. Should say that this is because it was installed prior to me moving in, so not my fault. So I will do these first and then wire them up and show you what that looks like. Now, just to be clear, the way that you get these wires out is that you'll probably have, you see these straps here, so be careful of the screws, you don't want to lose them. So those screws come out there, and then the wire coming out here. These here, really simple. If I just do it on the neutral, you just literally unscrew it a little bit, and then eventually you'll give enough in which you can just pull the wire out there. Okay, like I said, make sure that you're marking these up and you know which goes into which. But let's do all of these 5 bank first and put them into the new Repenic bridge, and I'll show you how. Okay, so one thing to be aware of is that in the Repenic thermostat receiver, you don't have a central heating closed, which is this NC, so you can tape that off. Now, what's important to understand here is that the valves, so when your central heating cools to heat, you will have some valves, and you can see my one, that white box there. What that does is that powers up, opens up the valve, and then water will flow into the boiler, which will indicate that the boiler needs to ignite and then heat the water up. And in older systems, the valve would be 2 ways. It would have to send a signal to open and send a signal to close. Newer style valves will automatically, as standard, close. Because if you lose power to them, you want to be able to that valve to shut. So in its standard configuration, it closes, which means that you might have a closed wire in here, which then will shut the power off. But it's really clean in the Repenic. All you've got is just a common and you've got an open. So the common you can jump from the live because it's basically a live feed. Alternatively, I've already got a common that's coming in, but I am not needing the open, the closed. I'm not needing the closed wire. So I'm taping that up so that it's safely stored inside the Repenic box. But in my system, the valves that I have for the central heating will close. Again, if any of this you are unsure of or you're nervous of, please do seek advice of a professional boiler engineer for your setup. But let me just show you the rest of it wired. So okay, let me show you what I've done. So this is my Tado receiver that I've only taken out the central heating. So you can see the power is off, it's switched off here. And I just thought I'd show you, this is the back plate. So what you've got here is you've got the neutral and the live here. I'm jumping between the live and number 1, which is my hot water common. So when you see common both in hot water and central heating, that means that it's the common live going across. So I've jumped that across here. Then what you've got here, and it's green and yellow, which is a bit deceiving, but this is the open 4. So these 2 here are for when you have only one channel, one zone. So what that means is if you haven't got more than one zone, so if when you turn your heating on, it comes on for the full house, then this is channel 1, number 4 open, and number 5 is your common, which is in my case black. So depending on where it came from, so you would have channel central heating open, and you would have central heating common. As I said, the closed one I don't need, so I've taped that off. So the channel, the CHNO has gone into 4 here, the open, and the CH common, which is the common, has gone into my 5 here, which is black. You could jump it from the brown if you like. Now I purposely did this because I wanted to show, before you obviously seal anything up, you need to make sure that all of the wires are behind. So if I just go like that, you can see that this one needs to be tightened up now. And then once I've done that, I will then be able to look at the hot water. So the hot water is actually, number 1 is the common, like I said before, and number 3 is the open, and number 2 is the closed. So number 3 is NO of the hot water, HW, and number 2 is the NC of the hot water, if that is applicable to you. But let me all wire it up and show you. So here we are, power is still off, but you've got, if I go right to left, the neutral and the live, and then you've got this jumper, which goes over to the hot water common. If I keep going right, you've got the hot water open here, and you'll have a hot water close, but I'm not using that. Then if I keep going to the right, on number 4, you've got the central heating open, and then in number 5, you've got the central heating common for that first channel. And if you didn't have that common, you can always jump it from the live, but I do already have that one coming in. Everything else I have taped off, I do not need. So just to be clear, for my setup, these are wires that came from an old wired system which went into the thermostat, so they have no power to them, and the NC is no longer valid as well. Now, if you do have the same situation, please do check that none of those wires do have power coming into them. You can use electrical tape like this, but make sure they are individually taped so there's no risk of them contacting. Do not tape them together. Again, if you are unsure, please seek professional advice from an electrician or a boiling engineer. So that is my connections, that's everything. Now, these prongs here, you need to make sure that you put the box back on, and once you put the box back on, it is sitting flush before you turn the power. There is no connection here, and this is exposed. You need to make sure that you put the face on first, everything fits in the box as it should be, and then we'll go from there. So let me just show you what that looks like. So on the outer box, one thing to be aware of is the wires that come out the bottom, you've got this plastic bit, and you're going to have to break that off. Do be careful, because if you don't, then you might be cutting into the wires when you try and press it in. So there you go. So you break that off, and what that means is when you put that over the box, it doesn't press down on any of the wires there. Okay. Now the one thing I didn't appreciate is these little screws on the bottom here. You need to have some access to it. So I will now have to sort that out. Fortunately, I had one of these little screwdrivers, so the screws are now back in the bottom there, which is great. Okay, so let me turn the power on. As you can see, everything starts powering up. This then starts getting power, and then what you've got is a flashing symbol here. For me, I'm going to make sure that my heating is always on and hot water on. The reason being, if you'd watched my previous video, this line here, which is an old setup, this was controlling my hot water previously, which has now been completely replaced by the Repenic. So let's now go set up the Repenic and make sure it works with the thermostat. So the Repenic is controlled by the Tuya app. So you'll have to download that, log in. So once you go in, make sure that you are logged into an account, maybe through your Gmail or Outlook or something like that. And then what you want to do is go to the top right. So make sure your thermostat is on. So make sure the batteries and it's got power to it. And what you'll find is in the top right, there is a drop down menu which just says add new devices. So click on add device. It will say, can I have your Bluetooth and location? Say yes, you want to do that, allow it all, and then it will start searching and it will find the wireless thermostat. And what that's doing is connecting your phone to the wireless thermostat, which will then ask for your Wi-Fi code. And it really is quite clever in what, once it's got the wireless thermostat automatically connects to the receiver. So once you've put in and it's asking you for your Wi-Fi password and you put that in and you finally log in, the wireless thermostat then becomes ready to use. And then if you click on it, you'll be able to actually find it. Now, first time using, no doubt you'll have to update, which doesn't take too long. So just hit the update now button. Once that eventually gets in, there you are. Now, interestingly, you can see mine's at 5 degrees because I've put it on antifreeze mode, but then you can start controlling it. And that means that the thermostat is now connected to the wireless receiver. So let me show you. Now you can see that the Wi-Fi light top left is on, but if you have got that wrong, so let's say you now want to change your Wi-Fi password or reset the system, just hold the network and the boost button down for 30 seconds. Without having to turn off the whole system, that resets the thermostat receiver. This is if you've got anything wrong or you want to change your Wi-Fi password or anything like that. So it should be okay because you've now got that Wi-Fi symbol at the top left, which basically means it's connected to the internet. But if I just show you what happens once you've held it down for 30 seconds, it then flashes, and what will happen is that light will go back to a flashing light, which means it's not connected to the internet and it expects a Wi-Fi password. So you'd have to go back into your app and you'd have to reconnect to the wireless network. Okay, and that means that with the channel button and anything, that just doesn't work. You need to go back into the thermostat app. So the next part of the process is connecting the thermostat to that channel. So go to the thermostat, hold down the button, go to connected, go to receiver, and you'll see channel 1. Click on that and it will start looking for the channel. Go to the receiver, hold down the channel button, and eventually the RF symbol will start flashing. That means that it's looking for a wireless receiver. If you then let go of the button, eventually it will then stop flashing, and what will happen is the channel 1 on your wireless thermostat will connect to that channel 1 on the receiver. Okay, so once it stops flashing, you'll see. So then eventually the RF light will go solid. Okay, and what that means is it has found the thermostat. So if you go back to the thermostat, okay, hold down the button to get to the main menu, go to what's called connected, click on that, and then you'll be able to see receiver, click on that, and then channel 1, it's connected. So it's connected to channel 1. So this thermostat is now connected to the receiver and it's all wirelessly connected so you can connect to the app. Okay, and you've pretty much got to the end now of where you need to be. So you can start playing with the program, you can start making amendments. Obviously, do check what position the thermostat is in, because as you can see for mine, it's in anti-freeze mode, that 5 degrees. So I had to change it out of that mode. And therefore it may be, because I was playing with it before I actually connected it all, you might need to just find the setting that will get it back into manual mode, or you can start programming it again for yourself. Okay. Now, the reason I thought I'd show you this is you can go to menu and then mode, and then you can start going to manual mode. So you can see here eco and all those kind of things. However, if it's on antifreeze setting, even though you put manual mode, I got a little bit stuck on this. So you'll need to go deeper into the menu to turn antifreeze setting off, which basically means you can go back into using it normally. Okay, so to try it all out, so the light on the right, which has got that drop, is the hot water, and when channel 1 is on, it means it is calling for heat. So what you want to try is that, first of all, go into the app or even into the thermostat and cool the hot water. Make sure that blue light on the second from right comes on, which is for the hot water, and then also cool the central heating, which in this case is channel 1, and again just check that your boiler loads up. Now the RF light being on and the wireless light being on means that you've got both connection to the thermostat and wirelessly to the app as well. So everything should work. So now let's fit the thermostat in its place. Okay, so the last part, which is actually the most satisfying and the easy part, is removing the thermostat if you've got it on the wall. So at the moment, the Tado wireless thermostat, now that you've disconnected, it will say here that it cannot pick up signal. Okay, so what you can do is you just pull this straight off like that. That is the back plate. So you'll be undoing that screw, and then this back plate here you can remove, and it takes off the whole lot. And if I then just show you what the Repenic looks like. So very similar, in which it sits in this nice little housing. If I just take that off there, so lift it just straight out. Oh, doing it one-handed while filming is not easy. So removes out like that, and then all you've got is these little screws here. So this back plate that you can see, you can then screw it in place. So there's just 2 holes there, and then to remove it, you just remove these holes here. And basically what you're doing is you're replacing the Tado back plate with the back plate of the Repenic here. So easy enough. Okay, so let me start taking this one apart and then I'll show you how it's done. So I've taken that screw out here, taken this out, and then you'll get to these two parts here. I know that all of this behind here is dead. However, do be careful if there is anything inside here which may still be alive. You shouldn't have, unless there was an old system, because this is wireless. However, that isn't to say that there may not be in the wall electrical wires. So do be careful if you need to take these out and you need to put new ones in. Again, if you're not sure, please do seek a professional. But in short, I'm going to be taking these two out, removing this plate, put the Repenic one back on. So let me show you. So here we go, the back plate for the Tado, and here is the Repenic back plate here. So what you'll find, which is really nice, is that if you've got, as we have, a box, you know, a standard set-in box that you had the Tado over, you'll find that the holes line up really nicely over the top of there. So you can now clamp this on, and as you can see, I've taken out the little 4 screws, put that back on. So let me clamp this up and then I'll show you what it looks like. So here you go. That's now mounted on there. I'm happy with how straight it is. And then I'll put this over the top, put the 4 screws on, and then the thermostat literally sits on top of there. So let me show you how. And there you go. So you've got this little shelf, and that's where the thermostat sits. So it just sits inside there. It's got a little magnet to it so it won't fall off. And there you go. You've got your thermostat working and replaced from the Tado system. We hope that helps. We do have another video which reviews this Repenic because it's quite new to the market against the Tado and against the Nest. We really like this, but go there and find out a little bit more on it. And I hope that helps. Thanks for watching. The other thing really don't like is that off the wall itself, so if this is the wall plate which it goes onto, this here means that as you're walking around, it's just got the batteries exposed. So if you do want to carry this around with you, you have to basically not have it wall mounted and have it like this, okay? So you can't walk around in it easily. So if you've got it wall mounted, the batteries are going to be exposed. There's no cover on the back here, which I think is really, really poor. So these batteries are completely exposed at the back unless you have this back plate that goes onto the back of it. So that means that you can't put it onto the wall. Repenic. So it's definitely got a different design to it, but I can do this later on actually. And 2AA batteries.